We're here now on Daf Zayinom and Beis, and you may recall that we said that Katlios are Sharsharaos, Hatlios B'Tzavora, and Nizomim Atashite Afa Ozet Tabos, Aletz Bosea, Mavirin Osa, Nimenikide Lenavla. So this is the idea of Nivel making her look sort of unkempt and repulsive. Yakach Mevi Chevel Mitzri. Now, we didn't exactly understand what Chevel Mitzri is. He says, Osi me'asiv shegodel svivos hadkolam. And so sort of like a something that twines around the deculture. Maybe I get a better word for the twines. Just 1 second. See what he has here. He says fibers. So he has the word fibers. It's a rope made of tsure hadekel, which is a fibrous substance that grows around the base of the palm tree. This material is commonly used for twine. Oh, so there is a word twine here in this context. Alternatively, Chevel Mitzri is an Egyptian rope, and Chazal understood that it would be that we use it because the Egyptians were notorious for their promiscuity, and the use of this type of rope indicates that the Sotah too acted promiscuously. Fine. Now the Kohen tore the Sotah's garments, and as we said before, let's just review this. It's as we said already on Zion Amud Aleph on the bottom, that if the clothing is torn, they are torn. If they are shredded, they are shredded. And he uncovers her bosom. That's what it says here, 52. Cohen exposes the woman's body in this way. So this is all to degrade the Sotah publicly in order to discourage other married women from putting themselves in compromising positions as this woman had done. Okay, then. Now, since the Kohen tore the Sotah's garments in order to bare her bosom, it was necessary to secure her garments around her so they would not fall, leaving her entirely disrobed. Hence, her garment was pulled up and bound above her breasts. Okay, then. Then it says that v'chol harotze liros. Yes, anyone who's curious and wanted to see her in that repulsive state, bol liros, chutzmi avadeh v'shivchol seha, they're not allowed to come to see her, but they shall leave a gaspa. And what does this mean? They shall leave a gaspa. He says here, shekasher odom roa es b'nei beso, daito miskaberes olav. Yafhilo tira v'lotovo lehodos. So when a person sees familiar faces, he becomes very adamant, very strong about his views and so forth, his ambitions. And since we're trying to invoke a confession from her in order to avoid obliterating the name of God, then this is going to be counterproductive. and the women are allowed to see her. And the Gemara later on is going to say they're obligated to see her. Shenemar v'nivasru o anoshim v'losa sena kizimaschena. Possibly Yechez. Sheyesh al anoshim chova l'ros b'nivula k'dei sheyikhu musar l'nafsham l'yechteu k'mosa. And all the women shall be chastised and shall not imitate your lewdness. And Yechezkel is chastising the Jewish people for adopting the noagos of Ovdei Avodah Zarah of certain or various foreign nations, and the Navi analogies, it makes an analogy to a woman who indiscriminately commits adultery with numerous partners. The chapter closes with God's assurance that the Jews who would have done so will be punished for their faithfulness, and their misfortune shall serve as an object of lesson for other people, for others who might emulate their ways. The Gemara says the following. It says, "Hayumal in Osa lebezdin agadol shebiyushalayim." So that's the High Court of Israel, made up of 71 elders. Inani mili, how do we know that a Sotah, in order to frighten her, it's not enough to do that in a bezdin of, let's say, 23 dayanim of judges. In the Parsha of Zakimam. So first of all, let's see the word Torah here in the Parsha of Sotah. So it says Ksiv Hacha. So we emphasize the word Torah. Ksiv Hasa in Zakimam it says Alpi HaTorah. We emphasize again the word Torah. In the case of Zakimam, we're talking about Beis Din Shel Shimei Echad. The pasuk says Sheyagidu Lecha Min HaMakom Hahu Makom HaMiyuchad Hainu Lishkas HaGazis Shesham Yashvu Beis Din HaGadol Afkan. Here too with Sotah, it's got to be the Beis Din Shel Shimei Echad. So again, the original testimony to establish Kini and Stira that took place in the local courts, but ultimately she has to be brought up to the Beis Hamikdash, Lishkas HaGazis, and then the Sanhedrin Agdolu would take over. And they sort of scare her or warn her and impress upon her so that what she shouldn't drink by invoking a confession from her. Aminu, the Gemara says, "Stira keder shema'imim olav shelo tishte kach ma'im olav shelo tishte." Very strange statement on the face of it. That on the one hand, we want to scare her off that she shouldn't drink. On the other hand, we want to encourage her and threaten her that she better drink. And it goes like this: Omer Abiti in Barloch Adavar Shetahora At Imdi Al Burayah. You should see if you're obviously convinced that you're sure, right, that you're not guilty, that you're pure, then maintain your own position. You should see and drink from the Marim to prove your innocence. L'fisheina mayim marim domel sam yovesh shemuna al basar chai shem yesham mak amachalchel v'yoret ein shamak ein amol klum. That we put some sort of a salve. I mean, it's called here a sam yovesh. See. A dry salve, and we put it on raw skin. If there's an open wound, then the salve penetrates the cells into the wound and heals it. If there's no open wound, then it has no impact whatsoever. So the bitter waters have an effect only if the woman was guilty. Otherwise, they don't have any detrimental effect whatsoever if she's innocent. We'll see later on that they have a positive effect. So the Brisa says that we actually encourage her to drink if she's innocent. And this against that Mishnah that established that we discourage a woman from drinking because we don't want to obliterate the name of God. And my answer is Lokasha. We could reconcile this kan kodim shenim chukam megillah, kan li'achar shenim chukam megillah. We discourage her from drinking before we have obliterated the name of Hashem. After we've done so, and she's about to drink, then at that point, we actually encourage her to drink. And then the Mishnah says, "Vi omer lefanei dvarim she'einom kedai l'shom Torah Rabbanan, omer lefanei dvarim shel haggadah, Aggadic statements, umasim she'eru maksuvim rishonim, and stories that are told in the Torah about the early greats. Kigon, for example, as it says in Iyov, Asher chachamim yagidu v'lo chichadu me'avosim." And he says that wise men, wise men say it was not withheld from their fathers. Yehuda hoda v'lobosh. Yehuda confessed his sin with Tamar, and the embarrassment did not deter him from doing so. V'maya sofa nachal chay olam haba. Therefore, he inherited the life to come. Reuven hoda v'lobosh. Reuven, in the story of the sin with Bilhah, was not embarrassed, and he confessed his crime by himself and Nachal Chayil Amba. Umaschar, what do they get in this world? Maschar, Amrina, they'll get next world. Maschar and Baal said, what schar do they have in this world? And the Gemara now quotes a pasuk in Iyov again. Lahem levadam nitna haaretz v'lo avar zar b'toch. To them alone the land was given, no stranger passed amongst them. So each merited a unique privilege in Eretz Yisrael. Yehuda acquired Malchus. Reuven would be the first of the Shvatim to get his portion of the land. That's in Transjordan. And then the conclusion of this verse, no stranger passed amongst them, alludes to the fact that these two tribes received their blessings from Moshe successively, and no stranger before the Shevet received a blessing in between their blessings. These two blessings came one after the other. Gemara says the following. That's B'chosef Shel Moshe, the blessings for Yehuda and Reuven were besmichus, v'lo mafrit b'neim achem. And he says here in the name of the masculine David, that's the Baal Chazdi David, the Metzudas David, Rabbi David Pardo, Shel Levi royalist Barech bein Shneim. Levi should have come in between. Lefi Seder Toldos. Right, Moshe Rabbeinu did not want to bless Shimon. He gave all the remez within the bracha of Yehuda. But Nikrakan Zar, Levi is called a Zar. Kevel and Shinyan Zesha Udu Baravim. Ariu Zaretz. So Levi didn't have that schus. Gemara says Bishleme be Yehuda Ashkechan di Odi. And we find that Yehuda was Modeh, and he confessed publicly in the Ma'aseh of Tamid that Siv Baker Yudam and Son Kamimeni. Ela Reuven Minola di Odi. How do we know that Reuven confessed his crime? The Omer Rabbi Shmuel, Barnach, the Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Ma'atet Siv. What does it mean in the brachos that were bestowed by Moshe Rabbeinu before he passed on? In Vizos HaBracha, Yechi Reuven Ve'al Yamos, Vizos Yehuda. So why is it that Yehuda is mentioned contiguous to the bracha of Reuven? And the word that's used here to introduce Yehuda is Vizos. We don't find it in any of the other brachos. Kol osam shanim shahoyu Yisrael b'midbar hoyu atzmosav shel Yehuda megugolim be'oram. I remember this Gemara from Makos. So during the years that the Jewish people were in the wilderness, the bones of Yehuda were rolling inside an Aram. And that's because he accepted upon himself a nidui in the presence of Yaakov. When he offered his nefesh as a guarantor for Binyamin. Anochi Arvenu miyodi tvakshenu lo have Yosef lecha itzaytiv lefanet lechatasi lechakol hayom. At Shalom Moshe bikesh al rachamim, Moshe stood up in prayer to petition Hashem for divine mercy. And Omar Lefana, this is what Moshe's tefillah was, the content and substance of Moshe's tefillah. Ribono shel olam migaram leRuven shahoda. Why did Reuven confess his crime? Who influenced him to do so? Yehuda. So therefore, is it appropriate that his bones, the remains of Reuven, should be disjointed? They should be connected to each other as if he's alive. What about the bones of Yehuda that are still mefurakim u'misgalgalim b'har? Bikesh Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. Listen to the plea of Yehuda. So again, Reuven would confess because of Yehuda. Now, Reuven's skeleton says here, Kol osam shanim shayu Yisrael b'midbar, hoyu atzmosav shel Yehuda megulgal. So I made a mistake. I said it was Reuven. I meant to say it was Yehuda. So Yehuda's bones were not intact. And Moshe Rabbeinu gets up and pleads in prayer for divine mercy for Yehuda. And he says, who influenced Reuven to confess his sin? It was Yehuda. Yet Reuven's skeleton is intact. Whereas Yehuda's is not. V'yat Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. Moshe immediately prayed, hearken Hashem to Yehuda's voice, allow his remains to find rest in the coffin. Al Eibore L'Shaf. His prayer was accepted. Yehuda's limbs entered together with entered their joints. The limbs entered the joints. So the word shaf means detached. So the sense of l'shafa to the place from which they were detached. They still did not allow Yehuda to enter into the Masifta Derakia. So his bodily, earthly remains found rest, but his soul did not. He was denied entry into the heavenly academy where he could engage in Torah discourse in the academy. The other sages. So Moshe continues to pray, return him to his people. And this tefillah was accepted on high, and Yehuda was admitted into the heavenly academy. He did not know how to engage in a dialectic with regard to the halacha of the law with the rabbis. So he was not even treated as a spiritual peer. And Moshe continued to pray, Yodav Rovla, may his hands contend for him in the battle of the Torah, may be able and capable of engaging in Talmudic debate with his peers. And this was accepted. Still, nevertheless, Yehuda could not conclude legal discussions in according to the law. He didn't have arguments that were accepted by the Chazal. And Moshe continues to pray, V'ezer mitzar of Tia. May you be a help against the adversaries to enable Yehuda to triumph in deciding the law. So Gemara asks the following: Bishlem Yehuda the Odi. Now we understand that Yehuda publicly confessed his crime, so that Tamar should not be burned at the stake. Why was it necessary? Was Reuven actually guilty of a crime that he had to confess his sin in public? I consider it as audacious. Anyone who specifies his transgressions in public, he demonstrates that he's not embarrassed by his conduct. In other words, anyone who publicly declares and confesses his crimes, that's a chutzpah. Reuven confesses publicly so that his brothers should not be suspected by their father Yaakov of committing the sin of moving the ladder's bed. As Reuven wanted to make sure that Yaakov would not suspect any of the other brothers. The Mishnah says, if she confesses that she was guilty of crime and she'll lose her ksuba, she'll have to write out a receipt for a ksuba. Shmami no kosvin shova. We see that receipts are written out for a debt document. Abai says that that's no proof. Why is that? Tvi mekaras. She tears up a ksuba. So we don't force the lover, right, the mischayev, to hold on to his shovar. We simply rip up the document which we mechayev, meaning the ksuba in this case. Amalei Rava rejects Abai and he says vashoveres ketani. It says in the Mishnah explicitly that she writes a receipt. Now you're changing the text. Elama Rava. This is a locale where the custom is not to write a ksuba. No ksuba exists, and therefore a divorced woman normally collects when she produces a get. And according to all opinions, the husband has no choice but to accept a receipt. The Mishnah says in Omra Tahorani, if she insists that she was guiltless, we take her up to the eastern gate at the foot of the Temple Mount, which was opposite the Shar of Nicanor. So the Gemara asks, Mailin Osa, it will take a look on the Ches, plus some time. She's already there, right? She's in the chamber of the Great Sanhedrin, which is right near the Shar Nicanor. The Gemara answers, we actually take her up, we take her down the Temple Mount in order to exhaust her and to weaken her resistance to confession. The Sanyas we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Shimon Elazar Omer Bezdin Messiah Esa Edim Imakom Lemakom Kedesha Titarif Daitan Aleim Yachsru Bayim. So we're talking about capital cases and their witnesses, and the court moves them from place to place in order that the minds become unsettled, so they'll retract their testimony if it's untrue. So the judges will begin their examination in one chamber, then move the witnesses to another part of the chamber, then to a different part of the chamber, in order to complete their investigation, their interrogation of the aid. And we're hoping that the hardship and the mistreatment will awaken in the Sotah her anxiety about the potential effects of the bitter waters, and therefore if she's guilty, she will confess. This is where we'll end here on Daf Ches Amud Aleph.